Hello, everyone. My name is Drew Pavey. I do pavement management up here in Alaska, and I will be talking to you a bit about our new project selection criteria for those projects to help us meet our state of good repair. So, what I'll cover today is one, why are we developing new criteria? Two, what is the new criteria that we're developing for projects to help us meet our state of good repair? These are projects that are intended to help us meet our federal targets. And these roads are those that do not need modernization or capacity, but do have problems like you can see here in this picture. We have a lot of roads that go through unstable permafrost, have deep ruts, or are cracked and rough just like everybody else has. And, we can't neglect those roads. So these are the projects that are meant to help repair those and meet federal targets. Then I'll go into what is next up here. What are we planning for our modernization and capacity criteria? So first of all, why are we developing new criteria? Alaska is a very large state. We have the Panhandle down in our southeast with our capital, Juneau. We have our population center in the Anchorage area and kind of the central Alaska. Then we have our northern region that goes up to the North Slope and western Alaska, where we have a lot of communities that are only accessible by ferry or aircraft. And then we have the Aleutian chain going down through the southwest. So we have a large state with people spread out over a very large area, and they all want to know, why do we do the projects that we do? Why do we select these projects? So we're trying to be more transparent. I thought that our old STIP criteria was very confusing. And if I have a hard time understanding our own criteria for how we select projects, how can we expect the public to? Or, even people in DOT or, our politicians. So you want to have new criteria that is transparent, that anybody can understand. We also want to make it data driven, where we're pulling our data from authoritative sources. So I do pavement management, so I'm providing the pavement data for our project scoring. We want to have the source and bridge that gives that bridge data, then traffic for theirs, safety. We want to establish who those authoritative sources are and get that data from them. We then want to automate the scoring process. So we have a spreadsheet and all the data is going into the spreadsheet that then you can put the project extents in. What's the route number, the route ID, what's the from mile point to mile point. Put that in with a few other inputs, and then it will automatically score all those projects for you. So pretty slick. The trick is just to getting it all work right, and I'll touch a little bit more on that later, but that's the idea. Make our new criteria transparent and data-driven so we can select the right projects at the right time for our projects that are helping us meet our federal targets. So the new criteria is being broken down into three categories. We have the proactive criteria, then reactive and general. So I'll go into the proactive first. Proactive is, of course, to kind of, it's more targeted around preservation of our roads, like this Alaska highway, the picture on the right. That's actually one of our interstates up here. We have a lot of these long, remote interstate roads that are just two lanes with small shoulders. And the proactive criteria is intended to preserve our roads, keep them in good condition. So the first criteria is what we call opportunity cost. It's what is the cost savings of doing this project now instead of delaying it. So we look at what is the cost of doing, preservation on that road. Then what is the cost if that scope lapses, if that scope changes and it turns into a rehabilitation. So what's the cost savings of preserving it now instead of doing a rehab later? So doing a work now will save money later, so we're giving, points for that. The second criteria is the change in the level of service of that road per dollar. So how much improvement are we getting from going and doing a project on this road? This is like a benefit to cost analysis that we're normalizing by project lane miles, so we don't penalize expensive projects if they are fixing more lane miles of our roads. And that level of service being used for the benefit cost is based on our three federal metrics, rut, roughness, and cracking. So we convert those to a 0 to 100 scale, with 100 being perfect road and 50 being the point of failure by the federal metrics. So, 100 for rut would be a rut of 0 inches, and then a rut of 0.4 inches, which is when it hits poor, would be a level of service of 50. Then that 50 point for cracking would be 20% cracking, and for roughness, IRI, that would be 170. So we convert three federal metrics to 0 to 100 scale, and then average those together into the level of service. And we're assuming that all the projects that we're doing are the right project at the right time. Probably not true, but that's the assumption. So we're saying that doing the project will return that level of service to perfect back to 100, and that is the change in level of service and how we are establishing that change in level of service per dollar spent criteria. Those are our two proactive ones. Then we have to be reactive still. We can't neglect all of our poor roads. We have a lot of roads that go through unstable permafrost. This is another stretch of that same Alaska highway that we were just looking at on the last slide. And so reactive is coming back to these roads and fixing them. So first one is time and poor. That is the number of years that the level of service of this road has been below 60 using that same level of service I just discussed. The next one is vehicle operating cost. This is essentially just an IRI, a roughness criteria. Rougher roads lead to higher costs. They can damage vehicles, lead to increased maintenance. And the public is very sensitive to rough roads. That's something they always pick up on. And I've had a number of people complain to me about this highway here that we're looking at. So yeah, the second reactive criteria is vehicle operating cost. The general criteria that we're using is just the time since last treatment. So how many years has it been since we've come back to this road and done a rehabilitation or reconstruction project? We don't count preservation against that because we don't want to, talk people out of doing preservation projects. We want them to do that. So it's just the number of years since we've come back and done rehab or reconstruction. Then the last general criteria is the regional maintenance and operations rating. We want to give our maintenance groups the ability to give that boost to the nominated projects that they think are the really high priorities. They're the ones out there dealing with all the problems on these roads. They know which ones need the most help, and want to give them the ability to try to get some of their top priorities through as long as most of the data lines up with the need that they're saying that there is. So we are currently having the call for projects. So I wish I could have told you more about how well this is going and that it's all working great, but you have the list of nominated projects from our three different regions, and we are currently reviewing the submissions and scoring them. And, with using a spreadsheet for automated scoring, it sounds great, but when you try to pull all this different criteria in and have automated lookups, you can have a number of issues pop up. And just like we just currently saw that it seemed like longer, larger projects were being penalized, which isn't the purpose. It's supposed to be normalized based on the project lane miles. So we're just seeing little errors in the spreadsheet and the automated scoring process that we're working through. And that's something I guess I would just caution all of you is don't get too complicated with your scoring. I don't think that we've gone too complicated with this, but it's certainly, been a lift to work through the spreadsheet and the scoring process, and we still haven't quite gotten there to get everything working right. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes simple is good. So what's next for us? We have a lot of roads that still need modernization and capacity. Our Matanuska-Susitna borough is, the population is growing at a very, very quickly. And a lot of our roads that were designed as 2-lane roads are now over capacity, and we're having to expand them because there are safety concerns out there with the number of vehicles operating on those roads. And like this picture here, this is in our South Coast region. This is an active rockfall area that we need to address and maybe, modernize this facility a bit more. So we still have these criteria to work through, and we're going to be, of course, starting with the criteria I'm talking about today with the state of good repair projects. But this is actually the easiest one. When you get to modernization, you have a lot more to look at, a lot more to evaluate, establish new data sources, new processes to automate the scoring, and even just getting agreement from our regions on how we should be scoring these projects can be a challenge, much less implementing brand new criteria for how we select them. So modernization is next. I think that we have a good handle on state of good repair. I think it's going to turn out okay here soon. And then we'll do modernization, probably get that worked through next year. Then we have capacity, the most complicated. Me being focused on pavement, I'm less involved with the modernization and capacity criteria, which, I'm actually kind of thankful for, I think, after seeing just the complexity of the city good repair projects. But that's what we're working on, trying to make transparent, automated scoring criteria that pulls from authoritative data sources. And yeah, first step's almost done. We'll go from here. And that's all I have to share with you today. If you have questions, please let me know, and looking forward to seeing you at the Peer Exchange. Thank you.